Good morning. I'm going to start out with an apology. We didn't have enough little plates. They're on their way up now, so if you missed out on a little plate for your pastries, they should be here shortly. Again, apologize for that. Welcome to Men's Breakfast. Thanks again for supporting our group. 70 people signed up this time, so we continue to have a good sign-up. One thing about sign-ups, there's been a slight change. To get an accurate count of the number of people that are coming and the number of people who may not want to eat, when you sign up, we want everybody to sign up. But as you sign up in activities, you'll see the comments area. If you're not going to participate in the food, just put not eating in the comment area. And that will give us an accurate count of people, chairs to set up, and also alert dining services as to the amount of people that will be dining. New residents. If you know of someone who on your floor just moved in, let them know about the men's breakfast and how to sign up for it. We want to make sure everyone that moves in is aware of the activities here. Now to introduce MensBkfstEdMueller. Ed moved to Casa, and Ed and his wife Sandra moved into Casa in 2018. Ed has a BS degree in electrical engineering, and he served at various CASA committees, including helping out on some of the computer changes that have occurred since then. So we appreciate that, Ed. So please welcome our speaker, Ed Mueller.
Thank you. It's a real privilege to welcome all of you and to say that I hope you have a good morning and enjoy the presentation. Okay, Dale asked me to talk a little bit about myself, and okay, so anyway, what I was going to say is that I was interested in electronic things from an early age. I also was interested in photography. I got my first box camera when I was in grade school or junior high school. And I not only took pictures, but I had to develop and print them too. And that went on for a long time. I ended up having a color darkroom at one point, and doing my own color photos. But I also worked at Rocketdyne in Southern California, where I worked in the instrumentation lab, learning all kinds of instrumentation from red hot to liquid nitrogen. And then I went back to school and got my degree and got a job with Lockheed in Sunnydale, working on the Polaris missile and flight controls. And after a couple of years there, I got tired of working in government projects and I went to work for IBM in their circuit design area. And eventually I ended up designing and leading the group that was designing the accessing circles for disk drives. And that went on for quite a while until I finally had to change to marketing because they were tired of manufacturing things in the United States. So my job then was dealing with Apple Computer and making them happy with the disk drives that we were getting out of Japan and Thailand, and making sure that these products met the specs. I had to entertain their engineers on trips to Japan and Thailand, Singapore, and then finally the end of 1996, I retired and never went back to work again. That was a good move.
While they're doing that, Ed, through his church and his work, has met a person from the Nepal Youth Foundation. And through that foundation, he was introduced to a family whose child had to come over here for an operation. And Ed and his wife took the child in for 6 months and helped him recover. And then the child went back to Nepal. So after that, Ed and Sandra got a chance to visit Nepal and meet the family and do a little tour. So that's what his talk is about today, if we can get the slides working.
Okay, now
There we go.
this is a historic laptop computer. It dates back to 2016. Oh, am I too far away?
Yes.
My goodness, I could hear myself so well. Okay, well, you know, Sandra and I never thought we'd want to go to Nepal. In fact, we never even thought of Nepal. Until one day, one evening, our doorbell rang and there were a couple of ladies there. And we found what they told us was that they were going to bring a boy from Nepal over to have a surgery at Stanford Children's Hospital, and they needed a place for him to stay. And that this surgery would be pretty serious because he would be in a cast for 6 months or so. And the cast would go from his ankles to his chest because they not only had to fix the birth defect that was an external bladder with no control, but they also had to take his hips apart and rebuild them because he could only stand like that. So we got to be pretty friendly with him, but he didn't speak any English, of course, and we didn't speak any Nepali. But things got along pretty nicely, and a couple of weeks before the surgery, the Nepali Youth Foundation brought over a boy who was a young man, I should say, who was a student at the University of Oregon. And he was Nepali and he spoke good English. So that became our translator for the next few weeks as Vishnu got ready to go to the hospital and get his problems fixed. Well, we became pretty good friends with Olga. This picture shows Olga Murray, who founded the Nepali Youth Foundation, and it shows Sandra and me. And we go on to the next shot here. The Nepali Youth Foundation eventually got to the point where they became very big. They bought land for a farm, and they have shops, and they can teach the kids how to repair the farm machinery. They can teach them how to use the farm machinery. They can educate the girls and the boys. So this is where they've finally ended up in Nepal. So here's Vishnu with us before the surgery, and you can see that he's maybe 8 to 10 years old. Nobody really knew his exact age. And he was stooped over because of his hip problems, and he's all wrapped up to take care of the dribbles. And here he is in the hospital with his surgeon. And you can see that he's enjoying every minute of it. And here's Olga greeting him. I think this was after the surgery, but I'm not really sure at this point. That's 30 years ago. And the family behind is, one is the boy who was being the translator, and the other is a little girl who was brought over for major face surgery. She had been caught in some kind of a fire that burned her face pretty badly, and she was in the States for several years while they did numerous surgeries to fix her face. So finally, after the surgery, it was Christmas time, and we had Vishnu with us and celebrated Christmas with him. And by then, he was good at English. We spent the evenings watching television, trying to think of the name of the show that Tim Allen had, where he would break things and fix them.
Cool, man.
We would just roar. I think it was called Home. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, 2 years later, we decided maybe we should go back to, well, I should back up just a moment and say that Sandra ended up taking him back to Nepal in early 1997. So that was her first trip to Nepal. I stayed home at that time. Okay, 2 years later, we decided that we really wanted to both go and see how he was doing and see what Nepal was like. And we shopped around for airline tickets, and they were all outrageously expensive. And then a brochure came for a tour with overseas adventure travel. And they were cheaper than buying airline tickets, and it included a tour on top of that. So that's what we did. Here, this is our tour group on the first night with the tour manager in the center there. He was our leader. His name was Dale Vishnu Karma. And we'll have more about him as we go. So here, some scenes, our hotel in Kathmandu. And next door to our hotel was this stupa up the hill. It was full of monkeys that would come down and greet you, hoping for something to eat. And then down in the center part of town is where there was the major stupa, or temple, if you will. And we walked around there, and that's the temple. And the earthquake, I think it was in 2017, the top of this thing broke off. But when we were there, it was all together because it hadn't shaken yet. And they allowed us to go up on the roof and see the views from the roof. And there you have Vishnu, happy as can be. Some more scenes from the roof. They had the funniest trucks in all over Asia, I guess. And here we are at one of the tourist sites over the old part of town. Some of the buildings are unique. And it's amazing what people carry around the streets there. We figured those must be foam mats. They couldn't be much else. Okay, so we did our tour of Kathmandu, and then we went to Pokhara. And Pokhara is the city, it's about maybe a couple hundred miles west of Kathmandu. And it's the entry point for the treks that go around the Annapurnas. And here's where you would go if you needed some medication or fix your bones or whatever. Make you real confident, huh? Oh, and then we met our carrier, our Sherpa, who would be with us for for the tour around the trails. And here we are loading up the bus to go to the trailhead, and all the luggage on top and the tourists in the center. And the Sherpas all ride on top, and the tourists get to sit inside the bus. Then our first lodge on this trek was this one. We had to hike into it from where the bus parked. And here we are getting our initial photo on the trek. And this is our tour group. Sandra's in the middle. I'm pointing on the desk here, it doesn't work. I could use my pointer, but I'm not going to. Okay, here we are heading up the trail. I should mention that our Sherpa has his pack on his back, and the pack is really full of the 2 packs that each of us would have had 1 pack, but the Sherpa takes them and he carries them all. Okay, the views from the mountains are just wonderful. The trail is really the highway, and it's a foot highway. You have places like this along the way where you have restaurants that you're not sure you want to eat there, but they look pretty interesting. And here you can see the highway again. And off in the distance is the Annapurnas, and that's about 10 miles away. So here you're overlooking one of the villages and down into the canyon. And here's one of the lodges, and that's a lady by the name of Mary Ann, and we'll have more to say about her later. Here we've got Sandra coming up the trail between a couple of Sherpas, one of the homes up top there. And here we see some more of the Annapurnas, that one they called Fishtail, and by golly, they have a cafe, a stop-off place called Fishtail. So here we are with our Sherpa, with the scenery that is, I can't see it all on this, so I have to turn my head. But anyway, another guest house there. We didn't stay in that one. And this is a school. And I combined 2 shots, one from the front, one from the back. But anyway, that's one of the schools. And here was a lunch stop where we would eat the lunch that was carried up there for us. They had a bathroom there if you really needed it. It was a hole in the floor, but in a little room. And here we've got another guest house type place. And you notice there's a pile up in the top there that is corn. They grow a lot of corn there, and they sand it up, and they like to serve you popcorn. And here's where you're at, right? All kinds of stuff. Gondruk was the main attraction. You can find that on Google Earth, actually. And this was the last place we stayed, and we're sitting there having dinner, walking up the trail. You're hot and sweating, and then you get there, and all of a sudden it turns icy. This was right around Christmas time, so it's, December, and you're up at about 6,000 feet here, so it was cool. And there we are with a view of the Annapurnas. And here you can see that this house right next to where we stayed has got hay and things stored on the roof. It looks like a big fire hazard to me. And there you can see the corn crib. And more views of houses and mountains. Obviously a helipad and lots of kids. And here's a traffic jam. There's a pretty good view of the Annapurnas. Again, that's about 10 miles away. They're about 22,000 feet high, the peak, the highest one. There's our group posing in front of Fishtail. Oh, and this tree, they did the funniest things to trees. I'm not sure if they cut them that way so the wind doesn't blow them over, or if they want to salvage all the wood they can for fires. Not a sure guess as to what they do. Here we're looking down at the village that was below where we were staying. And another corn crib. Yeah, the mountains are just majestic there. Now this is interesting because there's a man up there. I think he's in that busy spot about 2/3 of the way up. And he was trimming. Okay, this was the next morning, and I got up to take this picture, and I looked at the people, of course, and then I looked at the distance, and something was happening. And here's what was happening. It was an avalanche. Now that avalanche is 10 miles away, and yet it looks like we're right there. There was a Russian group that was in the wrong place at the time, and they got killed. Here's an enlargement of that previous one. Now these were all taken on Kodachrome. It was before the days of good digital cameras, so we don't have the resolution that I would have if we went there today. But here's another traffic jam. You have to move over and let them by. There's Sandra with the terraces in the background. And they had these rickety bridges that you kind of cross your fingers and go over one at a time. Don't want to overload it. And then at the end of the hike, we got down to the village and they started some entertainment for us. There were little kids as part of the entertainment. And there's some more. And they did some dancing. And there's Sandra. And then the boys put on a little show. And there is Dill, our tour leader, and one of the tourists and one of the natives. Here I am pointing at the thing on the desk again. I hope that helps you. Okay, this is finally the last stop as we headed down toward the bus and had to go down a long slope, but I didn't get a good picture of the stairs that we had to go down, but they were maybe 50 feet wide and 500 feet long. It was crazy. No banisters. And this is a Tibetan Buddhist temple. There's a Buddhist center, Tibetan center, where they had displays, and they also were selling rugs. And Sandra was a sucker for rugs. She bought 3 by 6 foot rugs, which then got packed along with us for the rest of the trip. When we came home, we had a duffel bag that was, it was about this big around. We had to talk the airline into taking it, and they did, finally, at no extra cost. Okay, so once we finished our trek part of the tour, we then got to our whitewater trip on the Seti River, which comes down out of the area that we had been and goes down toward the jungle park at the bottom. So here's where we stayed the first night, and here we're getting back into the boats the second day. Rats. And it was nice. There were kids up on the cliffs and they were throwing mandarin oranges down to us. Very welcome. Okay, so after we finished that, then we went to the jungle park, Chitwan, and the object was to ride elephants and find tigers. Well, here we are. I think that's where we were pushing off to go across the river to get to the park. And then here's the park entrance. And you notice the square thing with the reeds around it. That's a bathroom. So here we are, taking our initial picture. Souvenir. Okay, we stayed in places like this. Very nice, yeah. And here's Marianne again, who's down here at the bottom in the red. She's feeding the tiger. They had us actually, elephant. They had us put sandwiches together for the elephants. The sandwiches were banana leaf and some stuff to go inside, some greens or something, and wrap it up, and then give it to the elephant. Kind of like chumming them so that they'd be nice to you on the trip. There, he's getting the elephant ready to go. And here's how we got onto the elephants. I'm sure all of you have been on elephants before. And there's Sandra. I'm behind her somewhere. And somebody else took my picture here. Then we saw things like crocodiles, or is that an alligator? I don't know the difference. And rhinoceros, or rhinoceroses. And they had their young ones with them, and we would circle them with elephants. They would sort of guard the little ones. There's some more happy riders. And elephants are kind of all-terrain animals. They go through water and brush and mountainsides and everything. And this is the airport down at the Jungle Park area. And it was interesting. We got there about noon, and a plane came in, and all the soccer players had to clear the field. It was a grass field. And then the plane would land, and then they would go back out and play more. And several groups got onto planes and left. And finally, there was no plane for us. And the end of the day came, and we were stuck there, we thought. Well, one of the women on our tour had been in the Israeli army, and she knew exactly how to handle this, and she raised Cain with the jungle park, and they rounded up a bus and put us on the bus with a couple cases of beer and a couple cases of soda and some chips and other stuff. And off we went. Well, it's a long ride from the jungle park to Kathmandu, so it was dark halfway through the trip, and they stopped. People were saying, hey, you know, we've had too much beer, we've got to stop. So the driver stopped, and it was a wide spot where they had a pile of gravel, I guess. And he said, okay, ladies on that side, men on that side. And we took care of the problem. We finally got to Kathmandu in the evening. Sandra and I missed a dinner we were going to have at some friend's house there. We made friends through Olga, of course. Okay, then finally we're in Olga's apartment, and there's Vishnu, happy as can be, and the fellow behind him is one of the other partners in forming the homes that the kids were staying at. And this was interesting because this is inside of, they called it J House. It was about a 3 or 4 story house that the Nepali Youth Foundation was renting to house the boys in. And then they had another one called K House. And K House this is still J House. And K House is where the girls were. And then Olga had us sit for dinner. I think it was at J House, but the memory of which one is a little fuzzy at this point. You know, and here's Vishnu showing off the NASA shirt that Richard gave him. And finally, we got to the laptop in Olga's apartment, and we discovered that we had a new grandson, the first born in San Luis Obispo County that year, 1997. 1998, I'm sorry. Okay, but there's more. And more, here you see our guide, and you see Marianne. And gee, that's kind of a strange thing for a guide and a tourist, isn't it? Well, it turned out that they fell in love, and here they are at their wedding dinner at Yosemite. They came up to our house near Yosemite and stayed, and then went to Yosemite to the little chapel there and got married in the chapel. And then finally, the sad part is my brain is stuck again. But anyway, he became a pilot. He trained to become a pilot and learned to be qualified to be an instructor. And he was working out of one of the little airports along the foothills in the east of LA. And he had a couple of Japanese students that he had taken up, and he had had trouble communicating with them before. But finally, he had them on a night training flight. They ran into a mountain. So this picture is Sandra and Marianne taking his ashes back to his parents in Nepal. and that was Sandra's third trip to Nepal. And here's Vishnu again as he's getting older. This was on that trip that Sandra took. And now we say namaste. That's it. Are there any questions? I see a hand, Bob.
Was Vishnu totally cured? Was that operation successful?
Not exactly. He's leading a very normal life. He's now the pharmacist at the hospital there. But what happened is, since he didn't have a bladder, they had to manufacture one for him. And the way he relieves it is with a catheter through his navel. However, he is very active, has friends, goes on hikes, does all kinds of things. We're still in communication with him.
How long was the trek? Miles?
The trek, distance-wise, it was probably on the order of maybe 4 or 5 miles a day, and it was a 4-day trek. So it was an easygoing one, and you never got up very high. The highest was at one point where the helipad was, we're up about 6,000 feet. Yes, Bob?
I saw English all over the place, including in town. Do they have their own language?
Oh, certainly. We just don't speak it. No, this trek route was developed by an English tour agency. Oh, yes. Yeah, you, Mary.
I'm curious, when you were doing the trek and there's all these places that have food and I'm wondering what kind of bathrooms, how does that, all those little houses and little businesses get supplies?
There are a lot of people who take tours in Nepal. They don't all come with the tour agency we had. There are people who go independently and find a tour. The food and everything is brought up on people's backs.
And what about things like water? Of course, no electricity probably.
Well, water is very plentiful, but all the meals they served beer, and the beer was in quart bottles. And I asked them, well, how come you bring quart bottles up here? Isn't that kind of heavy? And they said, well, they carry them.
So is there any electricity up there?
I didn't hear that.
Electricity?
Only what they generate.
Okay. And what, does anyone have a flush toilet?
The answer is yes. They were unique English design, which it's a siphon kind of an arrangement. I don't really understand them. But we had one incident where the sink in the bathroom was stopped up, and we told the management, and they said, okay, we'll fix it. But the next time we used the sink, it flowed very nicely onto our feet.
Okay, very good, Ed. Thank you for the presentation. Next meeting, July 27th. Occasionally we'll go outside and bring an outside speaker. And that's the case this next month. 2 docents from the Midway will be here. And they'll be talking about the Midway then and now. And that's due to Don Schmidt and Chuck Loren gave us that information so we can get the docents in. And they'll be giving a talk, and as incentive, we're giving away 2 tickets to the Midway. Activities will be organizing a bus trip to the Midway. I think it's August 5th or 6th. It's not in the calendar yet. But be on the lookout for that. That's going to be a fun trip. Secondly, we're looking for speakers for the end of the year. If you're interested about your career or your hobbies or a trip that you might have taken, get in contact with me because there'll be an opportunity to talk for you to give your talk towards the end of the year. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.